Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we will be learning how to create a fully responsive website using a materialized CSS, and if you are new to my channel, do hit the like button and subscribe my channel. Before starting our video tutorial, first let's preview our website. Okay, here we have our index.html format. To get this format, you need to go to the given GitHub link in the description and click on a download code and then download the zip file. Okay, now what we have here is a CDN for our Google icon fonts, font awesome icons, and a materialized CSS. And down below we have a script source for our jQuery and a script source for our JavaScript. Okay, now I have divided this video into 6 different parts so that everyone can understand it properly. And first of all, we'll be working on our header. Okay, now first create a header tag on our body and then come up to a style and create a style tag, and we'll be working for our header and adding background image. Okay, add a URL in a folder img, that means, and we'll be adding a background position of a center, and background size would be cover, and adding a minimum height of 1000 pixel. Okay, now open in a browser. Okay, here we have our image. Now we'll be adding our navigation bar. For that, come inside the header, create a nav tag with a class of a nav wrapper. Okay, here you can see our navigation bar. Now let's make it transparent. Okay, it looks more good. Now we'll add our logo. To add our logo, we'll first create our div.container and put an anchor tag and put a class of a brand logo. Now add our logo. Okay, here you can see our logo. Now we'll add some link. For that, create another list, and that would be aligned right. Okay, now let's add some list with some links. First we'll put a home button, and then let's change it to collection, and third one to shops, and fourth one to contact. Okay, here we have our links, and they have a hover effect as well. Okay, now as you can see, our navigation bar isn't responsive yet, and it looks terrible on a small and a medium sized device. So first of all, we'll hide these links on a medium size and below. So add a hide on a medium and down class on another list. So as you can see here, it hides on a medium size and below screen. Okay, and as you can see, our image is also not responsive yet, our header file. So we'll work on a header file and add a max width of a 650 pixel and work on a header and add a minimum height of a 500 pixel. Okay, below the 500 pixel the image gets shrinks. Okay, it looks perfect. Now we'll add our side navigation bar. To add a side navigation bar, we'll be adding anchor tag and using a class of a side nav trigger, and adding a hamburger menu. To add a hamburger menu, we'll be using I class with a material icons. Let's say menu. Okay, here we have our hamburger menu. Okay, now add another list with a class of a side nav, and add a ID, let's say a mobile, because we'll be using a side nav only for a mobile screen. And just copy paste this link, and up over here on a hamburger menu we'll be adding data target of a mobile again. And as you can see, it doesn't work yet because we haven't added any JavaScript to it. So come down to a script part and add a jQuery on a side nav for a side nav. Okay, now it should work. Okay, it is not working. I think I have made some error. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is a data target, not a data only. Okay, now it should work. Okay, here we have our side navigation bar as well. Now we'll add some background color and some effects on our side navigation bar. First of all, we'll be adding color. That would be gray, darken -4, and align would be center. And now we'll add a logo as well. For that, create a __ tag with a class of a black text, a white text, sorry, and align would be center. And let's just copy this logo and paste it over here. Okay, now to add some effect, we'll be adding a class on our links. That would be waves effect, waves lighten with a white text. Okay, let's see. Okay, our effects are not working. Okay, this is effect only, not effects. Now it should work. Okay, it's looking perfect. Okay, as we have finished our header file, and it is completely responsive as well. Here you can see here. Okay, now let's move on to our second part, that is image with a description. Create a section tag with a class of a container section. Now inside we'll be creating a div for row, class row, and inside we'll be creating another div for column _h12 L6. It takes full screen for small screen and half of screen for a large screen. Okay, now add a image source. Put the image of a leather. Okay, now as you can see, our image is on its original size, so we need to make it responsive for our website. For that, we'll be adding a class of a responsive image. As you can see, it looks perfect, but we cannot zoom it right now. To make it zoomable, we'll be using a material boxed. Okay, and add a jQuery over here with a $material boxed for material box. Okay, now it should work. Okay, the hovering effect is also cool as well. Now we'll be adding a description on our right side. For that, create another div with the same column of h12 and l6, and put a h2 tag with a class of a black text, and let's say a letter, and add a paragraph. Okay, let's say in our browser. Okay, it looks perfect. Now let's copy paste it for 2 times. Okay, it looks perfect. Okay, now we want this second image to move on our right side and this description to move on the left side, and we'll be using a class of push and pull. For that, to move the image on the right side, use a class push to L7. Okay, here we can see our image is pushed on the right side, and now let's pull this description on the left side. Write a pull of L5. Okay, now it looks perfect. Now let's change the image and our content name to Levi's jeans, and down below we have a watch JPG, and let's say watches. Okay, here we have our images with a zoomable effect, and it looks perfect as well. Okay, now we have finished our second part as well, that is image with description, and they are responsive as well, you can see. Okay, now let's add some space in between these two photos. Go to up in style and work for class section, and add a padding bottom of 4bw and a padding top of also 4bw. Okay, now it should look proper. Okay, now we have finished our second part as well. Now we'll be working on our third part, that is parallax. Okay, now first create a div with the class of a parallax container, and inside this div we'll be creating another class called parallax, and putting an image source that is p1.jpg, and add a class of responsive image as well. But as you can see, our image is not shown over here because we haven't added any JS over here. So let's add some jQuery. Add a dollar to parallax for parallax. Okay, now it should see. Okay, here we have our parallax as well. Okay, to make it look more clear, let's add some paragraph below the parallax. Okay, now let's add our second parallax as well. Just copy paste this upper one and change the image to p2. Okay, here we have our second parallax as well. Okay, now we have finished our parallax as well. Now we move on to our fourth part, that is tabs. Okay, now we'll be adding our tabs in between these two parallax. So first remove this paragraph. Okay, now create a section with the class of a container section, and create another div with a class of row, and create another div with a class of a column with s12 and l5, and add a h4 tag with a class of a black text, and let's write a new trained info. Okay, here we have our content. Now let's add some paragraph. Okay, now we'll be adding our tabs on this right side. So for that we'll be creating another div with a column s12 and l6. Okay, now another list with a class of a tabs, and inside list with a class of a tab with a column l6 s6, sorry. Okay, now adding anchor tag with a class of a black text, let's say design details. Okay, here we have our design details. Now let's add another tab, copy paste it, and change the design details to fashion details. Okay, here we have our two tabs. Okay, and then now we need to add some space in between these two sections. For that we'll be adding a class of offset l1. Okay, it looks good now. Now we will be adding some paragraph over here. For that, create a new div with a column of s12 and give an id, let's say a dz for a design, and let's add some paragraph with a flow text and black text, and let's call it a new design. And now let's add some paragraph, and just okay, here we have our new design with a paragraph, some infos. And now let's work for our fashion details as well. Just copy paste it and change the id to fs, which represents our fashion, and new design to new fashion. Okay, now what we want is when we click on this design details, it should open new design, and when we click on fashion details, it should open new fashion. So for that we go to a script and work on a jQuery. Let's say a tabs for tabs. Okay, and add this id link up here. For design details we'll be writing dz, and for fashion details we'll be writing fs. Okay, it's looking perfect. Let's see again. Okay, now you can watch it clearly that it is changing. Now we will removing this hover effect. For that, right click to inspect and copy paste this to our style. Come up here and paste it on our style, and just write a focus, add a focus, and add a class of tabs, the class of indicator, and write a background color of a black. Okay, let's close it. Okay, now it is looking perfect, as you can see, and we have finished our tab sections as well. Now we'll be working on our contact. Now add a section tag with the class of a container section, and inside we'll be creating a div with a class of a row, and inside we'll be creating a div for column h12 and l5. Okay, now inside we'll be adding h3 tag with a class of a black text. And let's write get in touch. Okay, here you can see our content. Okay, now let's add some paragraph. Let's say our info. Okay, now let's add our contact on right side. For that, create a div with a class of a column h12 l5 and add a offset of l2. Okay, now add a form and create a div with a class of input field inside the form. And now add a icon for an email. Let's say email, and now add an input and type would be email, and let's add a ID that would be email as well, and put a label for email, and let's say email here. Okay, as you can see, our icons is not working properly, so let's add a prefix on our icon. Okay, now it is looking perfect. Now let's do it for same for our message box as well. Create a div with a class of an input field, and now add a message icon as well. For that, write a message with a prefix, add a message, and put a text area and add a ID of a message and remove this, and add a class of materialize text area. Okay, now go down and add a label for message, and let's say a message here. Okay, here we have our text area as well. Now we'll be adding a date picker. For that, create another div with a class of an input field, and add an icon with a material icons prefix with a prefix today. Write it today, and add a input field with a type of a text, and add a ID that would be date, and class would be date picker. Okay, now and then add a label for date and choose your date, let's say. Okay, as you can see, we have to write our date by ourselves. It is not auto pickable. So first go down to script art and add a jQuery for a date picker, to date picker for a date picker. Okay, now our date picker should pop up. Okay, now here we have our date picker. We can choose any months and any year with any days. Okay, it was scroll up. Let's see again, 27 August. Okay, now we'll be adding our checkbox. For that, create another div with a input field, and let's say a p tag with the skills required, and again a p tag inside a label, and inside we'll add a input, and type would be checkbox, and put a span, let's say a designing. Okay, here we have our checkbox. Now let's add one more checkbox. Just copy paste this and change the span to modeling. Okay, here we have our two checkbox, which is looking cool. Now we'll be adding our submit button. For that, create another div with a class of input field again, and let's align it center, and add a button tag with a class of a btn, and that would be background with a black and a white text, and let's say a submit. Okay, here we have our submit button as well. Okay, now we are on our last part, that is our page footer. Now add a footer tag with a class of page footer, and that would be in a color of gray darken -4. And create a div with a class of a container inside, and inside the container we'll be creating another div with a class of a row, and inside the row class we'll be creating another div with a class of a column S12 and L6. Okay, now add a S5 tag, and let's say about us, and okay, here we have our footer. Now let's add some paragraph. Okay, now we'll add a connect us on our right. For that, create a div with a class of a column S12 L4, and offset would be L2. Now put a S2 tag, S5 tag, sorry, with a connect us. Let's say write a connect us. Okay, now add another list and add some list with some links. Let's say a Facebook. Copy paste it twice, and now change the Facebook to Twitter, and third one to Instagram. Okay, here we can see our connect list. Now let's change the text to a white color. For that, put a class of a white text. Okay, now last part, we'll be adding our copyright. For that, create a div with a class of a container, and that would be aligned center, and a color would be cyan text. Now write a h6 tag with a end copy, that is a symbol for our copyright symbol. Write your logo. Okay, here we have our copyright as well. Okay, we have finished making our website, so let's review it for our last time.